Grief does not keep a schedule. It does not wait for a convenient time or a private space. Sometimes it is waiting for you when you wake, sitting with you in the early quiet before the day begins, before you have the energy to push it aside or manage it into something more presentable. If grief met you this morning before you were ready for it, you are not alone in that, and you do not have to face it alone. Before we go anywhere else, let us simply acknowledge what you are carrying. Grief is one of the heaviest things a human heart can hold. It reshapes the ordinary, makes familiar rooms feel foreign, familiar routines feel hollow, familiar faces feel far away. It is the body's recognition that something real has been lost, not imagined, not exaggerated, lost. And the loss that brings grief comes in many shapes. The death of someone irreplaceable, the ending of a relationship that was meant to last, the slow dissolution of a future you had counted on, the loss of health, of purpose, of something you cannot even fully articulate, but whose absence is unmistakable. Grief is grief. It does not require a category that qualifies it. Whatever loss has brought you here this morning, it is real, and it deserves to be held with care. There is a habit in our world of wanting grief to resolve quickly, to reach the end of the stages, arrive at acceptance, return to productivity. We are uncomfortable with mourning that does not wrap up neatly. And sometimes, in religious spaces, there is a pressure to perform a kind of peace we do not yet have. To say the trusting words before we have finished weeping, to look toward the resurrection before we have fully sat with the death. This morning is not that. This morning, we are going to sit with the weight before we rush toward the light. Not because the light is not real, it is, but because grief cannot be rushed past without cost. What we cannot mourn, we cannot release. And what we cannot release stays with us in ways that hollow us out from the inside. So here is the permission this space offers you. Feel what you feel. Grieve what is lost. Do not perform a recovery you have not yet had. Grief is not the opposite of faith. In fact, there is a kind of faith embedded in honest grief that is deeper than cheerfulness could ever be. It is the faith that says, this loss was real, and I will not pretend otherwise. It is the faith that says, I believe the one who made me can hold the weight of this, and so I will not carry it alone. Honest mourning, brought into the presence of God, is one of the most courageous acts a person of faith can do. In Psalm 34:18, we read these words, and they are among the most tender lines in all of Scripture. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. Close to the brokenhearted. Not at a distance, offering observations. Not waiting at the end of the grief for you to arrive. Close. The word in Hebrew suggests nearness, proximity, presence. The Lord is near to you, specifically and particularly near, in the moment of your breaking. There is a theology in this that runs against a great deal of what we unconsciously believe. We often imagine that God is most present when we are most together, when our faith is strong, our prayers articulate, our gratitude flowing freely. We imagine He is somewhere on the other side of the grief, that once we get through it, we will find Him there. But this verse tells us something different. It tells us that the brokenhearted are not far from God. They are where God is. He is not beyond the grief. He is in it, beside you, closer in your breaking than in many of your other moments. The very state that feels most God-forsaken is, according to this verse, the state where God is most deliberately near. And the word saves matters here too. Those who are crushed in spirit, that phrase captures the experience well. Crushed. Not mildly disappointed, not temporarily discouraged. Crushed. And to those people, to you, in whatever crushing you are carrying this morning, the promise is not simply that God sees, but that He saves. He acts. His nearness is not passive observation, it is active presence, moving toward rescue. What does that rescue look like in the middle of grief? I think it looks different for each person and each loss. Sometimes it is a sense of steadiness in the morning that was not there the night before. Sometimes it is an unexpected kindness from another person that arrives at exactly the right moment. Sometimes it is simply the ability to get through the day, to put one foot in front of the other, and to wake up again tomorrow. Sometimes the saving is not a dramatic deliverance from the grief, but a quiet strengthening within it. The discovery that you are still standing, still here, still able to reach toward God, even in the breaking. Rescue rarely announces itself with trumpets. Often it looks like small mercies accumulating into something that begins slowly to resemble hope. I do not know what rescue looks like for your specific grief this morning. I do not know what comfort feels like in the loss you are holding. Rescue and comfort take different shapes in different seasons, and I would not pretend to package something as complex and personal as grief into a formula. What I can tell you is that the God described in this verse is not standing back, watching grief happen to you from across a room. He is close. He is present. And His presence, while it does not undo what has been lost, changes the nature of the carrying. There is a difference between grief held alone and grief held in the company of a God who drew near to be with you in it. And Jesus Himself said something about grief that we need to hear, because it is so counter to what the world tells us mourning means. In Matthew 5:4, we read His words, "Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted." Blessed. Of all the words you might expect to be paired with grief, burdened, defeated, tested, blessed is the one Jesus chose. Not because grief itself is good, not because loss should be celebrated, but because the ones who mourn are the ones who have loved something real. The ones who are crushed in spirit are the ones whose spirits have been opened wide enough to be broken. And those who grieve deeply are those who will receive comfort deeply. The comfort promised here is not a bandage placed lightly over the wound. The word Jesus used carries the weight of the Holy Spirit's name. The Comforter, the Paraclete, the one who comes alongside. To be comforted is to be accompanied, to have someone walk into the grief with you rather than waiting outside it. And that is exactly what the God of Psalm 34:18 does. He is close to the brokenhearted, not to pull them out before they have finished grieving, but to be with them in the midst of it. You are not being asked this morning to skip the grief. You are being invited into a grief that is not walked alone. And there is something worth sitting with in the phrase, "those who are crushed in spirit." Crushed is a word that knows what it is talking about. It is not the language of mild sadness or passing disappointment. It is the language of something bearing down with such weight that the ordinary shape of a life gets flattened. If that is where you are, if the grief has been that kind of heavy, if it has changed the landscape of your daily experience in ways that feel permanent, then this verse is speaking directly to you. The promise is not for people who are mildly inconvenienced. It is for those who are crushed. It holds the heaviest grief. It was written for exactly this kind of mourning. Let us bring this now into prayer. Not with perfect words, not with a testimony of how far we have come, with exactly what we have. The weight of this, the reality of the loss, the body that remembers before the mind does each morning. And let us bring it to the one who drew near specifically to be with us here. There is no right way to pray when you are grieving. There is only showing up. Some mornings that means words. Some mornings it means sitting in silence and letting the silence itself be the prayer. The presence of a heart that is too broken for language, but still turned toward God. He receives both. He is fluent in both. The Spirit, Paul tells us, intercedes with groanings that words cannot express. You do not need to find the right words. You need only to turn. Father, I come to you with a grieving heart this morning. That is the honest truth of where I am, and I am not going to dress it up or lead with something easier. My heart is broken, and the brokenness is real. You know the shape of what I am carrying. You know the loss, what it was, what it meant, what the world looks like differently now that it is gone. I do not need to explain it to you. You were there. You are here. And I trust that you are not asking me to pretend it does not hurt. It hurts. Some mornings it hits me before I am even fully awake. Some days I think I have made peace with it, and then something small, a sound, a smell, a moment that used to belong to something that is no longer here, brings it flooding back. And I am learning that this is not weakness. This is what it means to have loved something real. But I am here because your word tells me something I need to hold on to. That you are close to the brokenhearted. That this is not the state farthest from your presence, but the state where you draw nearest. That the crushing I feel is not evidence of your absence, but by the testimony of Scripture, the very place where you are most deliberately, most tenderly close. So I receive that, even if I cannot feel it yet, even if the grief is louder right now than your nearness. I receive the promise that you are here, in this broken place, and that your nearness is real, whether or not it reaches me this morning as a feeling I can name. I release the pressure to be finished grieving. I release the sense that mourning is a phase I should have moved through more quickly, that I am somehow failing by still feeling the weight of this. You made me to love, and love and loss are inseparable. The grief is not a malfunction. It is evidence that what was lost mattered. I ask you to be what your word says you are. Close, near, present in the mornings when the grief arrives before I do. Near in the ordinary moments when the absence becomes acute without warning. Near in the places where I am most crushed and most in need of the saving you promised. And Father, I ask you to be patient with the parts of me that are still angry, still asking why, still struggling to locate the good in this. I trust that you are not offended by honest grief. I trust that you can hold the anger and the confusion alongside the faith that is still there underneath it. The faith that is not left even when I could not feel it. Walk through this day with me, not rushing me past the grief, not forcing a false peace, just present, just near. Just the God who drew close to the brokenhearted and promised to save those who are crushed in spirit. I ask for small mercies today. Not necessarily the lifting of the grief. I know that takes time, and I am not demanding a timeline from you. But small things. A moment of unexpected peace in the middle of a hard hour. The ability to eat, to rest, to be present with whoever is near me today. Something that reminds me even briefly, that life still holds good things, even when it also holds loss. Something that feels like a gentle hand on the shoulder. Your hand, not a resolution, just presence. And I ask for the grace to receive help when it comes from human hands. Sometimes the way you draw near to broken people is through other people. Through a friend who calls at exactly the right moment. Through a word that lands perfectly, even though the person speaking did not know what you needed to hear. Give me the grace to receive those gifts without guilt, without minimizing what they mean, without being so locked inside the grief that I cannot feel the love being offered. Let me be held not just by you, but by the people you have placed near me. I also pray for others who are carrying grief this morning. People I know, people I will never meet, who woke up today to the same impossible weight. You know each name. You know each loss. Draw near to them, too. Let the same promise that holds me hold them. And in your time, not mine, begin the work of comfort. Not the comfort that pretends the loss did not happen, but the deep and real comfort that comes from someone who walked through loss himself, who knows the weight of death and the power of what lies beyond it. Let that comfort come, slowly if it must, gently, in the way that does not bruise the grief, but gradually, over time, transforms it. I do not know what lies on the other side of this season. I cannot see it from here, and I am not going to pretend that I can. But I trust that you do. I trust that you are already there, already holding the day when the grief lifts enough to breathe freely, already writing the rest of this story. I do not need to see it to trust it. I trust the character of the God who drew near. And I ask, even now, that you be working in the grief itself, not just beyond it. That the mourning would not be wasted time, not just something to endure until the other side arrives. That in this very season of breaking, there would be something happening in me that only happens this way. A deepening of compassion, a loosening of the things I was holding too tightly, a renewed sense of what matters and what does not, a capacity for empathy with others who are broken that I could not have had without being broken myself. Do not waste this grief, Lord. Redeem it. Use every part of it. Thank you that weeping is not the final word. Thank you that blessed are those who mourn, that the grief itself, held in your presence, carries within it the seed of comfort. Thank you that I do not have to earn the right to be comforted, that the breaking is enough to bring you close. Help me to be gentle with myself today, to give myself permission to feel what I feel without adding shame to the grief, to move through the hours at whatever pace is honest, and to return again and again to the truth that I am not walking through this alone. I am held by the God who is close to the brokenhearted. That is where I am this morning, and that is where you are too. And now let these words settle over you like a gentle hand, not rushing, not pushing, just resting, as a benediction for the day that is already held by the one who drew near to you here. May you move through this day knowing you are accompanied, not alone in the grief, not abandoned to carry it in the dark, but accompanied by the God who is specifically, deliberately, tenderly close to the brokenhearted, which is where you are and where He is too. May you know this day, somewhere beneath the weight of all you are carrying, that you are not alone in the grief. May the God who drew near to every broken thing that has ever reached toward Him draw near to you in a way that is real and quiet and unmistakable. May the promise of Jesus, that those who mourn are blessed, that comfort is coming, become not just a theological position, but something you feel, even briefly, in the long middle of a hard day. May the comfort arrive in small ways today, not necessarily solving anything, but reminding you that someone is here with you in it. May the weight you carry today be held not by your strength alone, but by the nearness of a God who promised to be close. May you grieve without shame, trust without pretending, and find that His grace is still present in the broken places, especially there. And may you know, deep in the part of you that still believes, that grief held in the presence of God is not the end of any story. It is the middle, sometimes the long, hard middle, of a story that is not finished being written. The one who draws near to the brokenhearted is also the one who makes all things new, not by erasing the loss, but by one day, in His time, making it mean something more than pain. That day may be further away than you want it to be, but it is there, already prepared, already certain. And the God who is close to you today is the same God who is waiting for you there. You are held. You are accompanied. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted, and you are not alone. Amen.